So, hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of Talent Views, a virtual series where we talk to trailblazers in the fields of. I'm letting people in. Okay. Um, it's a virtual series where we talk to trailblazers in the field of all things talent, human resources, talent acquisition, talent management, staffing suppliers, managed service providers, technology platforms, and more. So, my name is Anu Rao, and I oversee the marketing function here at the Indotronics Avani Group. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome Meena Lochani Kumar to our virtual stage today. Meena, as I call her, is an HR practitioner whose expertise lies in the areas of executive leadership development, L&D, talent and organizational effectiveness, career architecture, and culture. She has extensively used neuroscience, systems thinking, and transactional analysis while driving change and shifting mindsets needed for organizational transformation. She currently serves as the SVP of Talent Management at Northern Trust Corp, and her previous avatars have included thought leadership roles at Sutherland, Mahindra's, Cummins, and Mindtree, amongst others. She continuously champions trust to build lasting human relationships in this digital virtual world. She's a pioneer in the corporate mentoring space in India and has been a speaker and panelist at various international forums and received several awards for leadership acumen by international organizations like World HRD and International World Women Leadership Federation. She has an MS and is an alumnus of XLRI, one of the top management institutes in India. Meena also has been a very dear friend to me, ally, and a guiding light through the years. One of the many leadership lessons I have learned from her is the power of visualization to achieve short term and long term professional goals by creating a clear mental image of what the future state would look like if we embraced our journey. And I can't wait for all of you to gain from her unique perspective and invaluable insights, not just about employer branding, but the many professional insights that I hope you will walk away with. With that, a very warm welcome to you, Meena.
Thank you so much, Anu. It gives me immense pleasure to be speaking to you and to all of you who have joined at this time, and truly hope it's a very engaging conversation. And keep typing away your questions. More than happy to answer. And Anu, that was a fantastic introduction. Felt very humbled. Thank you.
Thank you, Meena. And as Meena said, keep peppering her with questions. She loves taking it, and you will see how beautifully she takes it on. Now, before we get into the meat of the discussion, let's start at the beginning, not when you were born, but what put you on the path of talent management.
Very, very insightful and reflective question, I must say, to the start of a wonderful journey that we're going to have. Um, I think we all are at the right place at the right time for the right reason with the right purpose. And if I were to sum up my journey, that's exactly how I can think about it. I started off as a general HR practitioner, and as I was enjoying that role, I moved into an organization where organization development, and I'm talking of 20 years ago, organization development was not at its peak. So you had to dirty your hands, fold your sleeves, get into work and understand as you are executing. Today, you have several billion certifications that give you an organizational development practitioner certificate, etc. So those days, I landed into that job. That's how I would put it, and never knew that would be the inflection point in my career. And this is where I will land after 20 years. So um, it was a beautiful journey where I started off with understanding the fundamentals of organization development, moved on to create moved on into spaces of organizational effectiveness, mentoring, which was unheard of in the corporate space way back in 2006. Moved on to leadership development, mid managerial engagement, competency mapping, which was the in thing those days. And today we don't hear much of it. It's more of skills today. And also into spaces of culture and integrity. And in hindsight, Anu, I think that was the best thing that would have happened to me. If I were to kind of say, is there somebody on earth who really is passionate and loves her job? I would raise my hand first to say, yes, that's how it's been. So I think thanks to all the great opportunities and being in the right time and the right place, I'm here talking to you today. That's how my journey began.
That was beautiful because if someone were to ask me, I would say the same thing. It is being at the right place at the right time, but also an ability to spot the opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
Moving on with the discussion, I want to share a statistic. Now, before this is just to set stage for the next question. Okay, so in a recent survey, 65% of the worldwide companies surveyed said that their spend on temporary workforce, contingent workforce, is going to increase even further. So there is a real race for talent brewing for all staffing companies, including ourselves. Not only do we need to access best fit talent first for our client and retain them, we also need to build internal people teams to support. And this means a strong employer brand is an imperative to attract and retain talent. Now, Meena, at a recent SHRM conference, I had heard you talk about talent shortage and how effective talent management can help address that. Now, talk to us about that and some of the business problems that your role helps address. So maybe you can divvy it up into two parts, the external realities and the internal business challenges around talent.
That's a super duper question, Anu. I think that's the real challenge the world is facing today and perhaps will continue to face in the next few years. So, when we kind of split this question into what are the challenges in the external talent marketplace, I think there are three to four which are very significant. One, you see a lot of shifting demography. So you see the Gen X or the older generation, the retiral population is on the rise, which means you need Gen Y and Gen Z to quickly move, maybe even Gen Z plus, to quickly move into those roles and take on those roles. The challenge there is Gen Z, or rather Gen X, is going away with a lot of tacit knowledge that they have gained over years through experience, through their action learning. And this is something that they're carrying away with them, which is not completely tapped by the rest of the generation. So you see a multi generational workforce in every organization, but you also see the retiral population on the rise, and you see the younger population not yet ready or not as much ready to take on the experienced roles that exist within an organization. That would be point one. The second is, I think we are living in a world of changing technologies day in and day out. You wake up each morning, there is something new that you get to see on the screen. There is something new that happens to you, and you have to quickly adapt to the shifts, the patterns, and the kinds of technologies that is hitting us day in and day out. So it's more like if you're not willing to adapt, then you are out of context immediately. So whether you like it or not, I'm not a technology bird. I don't love technology, but I don't have a choice. If I have to remain relevant and contextual, I better pull my socks and learn this too as the world is evolving. That's the second thing. And with this shifting technology or technologies, what is also happening is the quantum of skills that somebody is needed, is expected to have, is also on the increase. So you do see a certain population quickly adapting to this, upskilling themselves, cross skilling, and being ready for what will hit them tomorrow. But you also see a vast majority happily settled in the current skills that they have. And that's where you don't have that much of talent in the external market that one can absorb for companies like you. The third is you do see skill gaps itself, right? So you have a certain set of people with advanced niche skills, and you also have the other end of the spectrum where there are very broad-based skills that many of the employees come with. So how do you fine balance this in terms of demand or in terms of the supply that you see on the outside? Because this is a constant mix that you're experiencing in the external world. And I think it's more about the changing needs that people are coming with when they enter an organization. For example, younger generation have a mind of their own. They're very clear about what they want, what skills they want to be really learning, where they want to apply that, which industry they want to be part of. Alongside, you're also seeing something called as skill adjacencies, right? So I remember, even 10 years back, a particular set of skills was used in a particular set of industry. Today, let's take the example of artificial intelligence, or you're talking of big data. These are skills that are industry agnostic. You can apply the same set of skills anywhere, which means you are facing talent shortage because of that also, because the same talent that was earlier available for an industry is now spreading across different industries, and that's what's happening in
Mhm.
the external world. Now when you look at it internally, it translates to two things. One is, how prepared are we for succession, particularly for critical roles with specific skills, specific talent. And two, we are seeing a shortage in women leaders, particularly gender diversity. It's ebbing. Even though you push it up through specific interventions, you do see that it is ebbing constantly. And there could be multiple reasons for that. So I think for organizations, there is a constant battle of resources not being available, particularly with respect to talent, both at an external and at an internal level. And that's the fine balance that organizations are trying to fight day in and day out. That's my
I,
perspective.
Thank you so much, Meena. I loved that you mentioned multi-gen population, because that's one of the questions that we get often, that how are we building the culture within our organization that can support someone who's 65 and also someone who is 80? Because
Correct.
literally people at every age are entering the workforce and their needs are different, but at the same time they can learn from each other, right? And now you talked specifically about women leaders. Now, that is one thing that is something I have seen my own organization pivot 10 years back, because many in some of our offices, like India, they work night shift. So women were not part of our workforce 10 years back. But then we said, no, this does not bring value that women in the workforce can bring. Let's make an environment that's conducive for them to work safely, but we need women in the workforce. And there was an internal mandate that we need to have by 2025 about 45% of them women, which was set by our CEO. In your experience, what has been generally the challenges that you've seen around women in the workforce, and what can one do about it?
Again, I would like to kind of split this into something internal and particular to a specific woman vis-a-vis the external environment in which she's aligned. So generally, when you look at women, we are not the first ones to raise our hands for several different jobs, because we still come with an element of self-doubt wherever we reach. And it's difficult for us to say, I don't know this, but I can learn and I can actually perform. And we do perform, we excel in many, many places, right? So the whole point is that element of self-doubt as an individual that a woman has to overcome, which is the first big challenge organizations face. Second is the kind of support the ecosystem can provide. And this has been talked about and beaten to death, for the past several years. So, how do we as an organization provide the right context for women to thrive? How do we allow for change management to happen effectively, both at the mindset level as also adapting and accommodating to the changing needs in her life? How are we really, as an organization, understanding the life stage and the career stage that a woman is, and how do we align and support her development so that she is completely confident and she is able to really excel at whatever role she chooses? Third, I think there is a preconceived notion that certain roles are not meant for me. For example, I don't know where I read this, but when children were shown two images, one of a man and one of a woman, and asked this question as to which of them is a police officer, most of the children kind of pointed to the male in that image, right? So it's also a question of the stereotyping that we've grown up with, that men
Mhm.
can be part of police, men can be part of the army, women are not supposed to be this, that, but that has changed. But what I'm saying is a lot of these stereotypes still keep coming up even at the workplace. So that's a challenge that you face. Men have really supported. They are the best allies at the workplace now. But I think it's a question of still working towards and nudging them to understand that women can be data architects, women can be at a CIO, a woman can
Mhm.
be a CEO, and I think those path breaking journeys is something that many organizations of today are experiencing, which is brilliant and which is good for the future.
Thank you for mentioning those specific roles like a CTO and an architect and a CIO, because I know when we were talking about this earlier, you said that in the initial phase, women are there in technology roles. But as the roles become senior, there seems to be a leaky pipe,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
So, which kind of,
Continues.
I'm sorry, Meena, I interrupted you.
It continues. The leaky pipeline continues. And that's where, internal succession, identification of top talent, and how do you really nurture them? All those come into the question, and they are occupying a major part of the blank canvas that used to be earlier.
Mhm. So now that we know, we talked about talent shortage, we talked about certain diversity metrics like women in the workforce, but it also applies to all other forms of diversity and readjusting for different generations. So, how should one work with the talent acquisition teams to make it a more effective, to build a stronger brand and be an employer of choice?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. And it sets me, it takes me a step back to really kind of put together what's in my mind when I think of a brand.
Mhm.
And I think it spells two things for me, Anu. One is it's a promise, and it is about consistency. So when we talk of any brand, we assume and we presume that these two are a given, that the brand has a certain quality, they promise to give us a certain quality, and they're consistent in providing that quality and in delivering that quality. I think it's not very different for leaders, it's not very different for people, it's not different for managers. Your brand should reflect both consistency, and you should be keeping up the promise of what you are expected to deliver day in and day out, right? Now, if you take this question to perhaps the talent acquisition team, then it is even more significant because they are the brand ambassadors or the first experience creators for a potential candidate. So even before the candidate comes into the organization and faces other functions, I think talent acquisition is the first point of contact. And what and how they create that experience for a potential employee is a potential candidate at that point in time becomes crucial in defining the brand of the organization as well, or the organizational brand. So as a potential job seeker, right from the way my interview is scheduled, to right from the way the interview is conducted, to right from the way the feedback is given to me, the way I'm onboarded, the entire process is an experience for me. Now, if it's not going to be consistent, you do this, wonderful process only for senior leaders, and people who are joining at very junior levels, you don't give them the same experience, which happens in reality. Let me be very candid about that. So then that is an experience that you don't want to hear about from the market. Certain pockets of your potential candidates saying I had a great experience, and certain others not rating you so well on that experiential journey. So I think it becomes very crucial for the talent acquisition team to understand that it is not a role that they are playing, but they're actually extending the employer brand to the candidate. And therefore, consciously being aware of the kind of experiences you can create across the entire cycle becomes very, very important. I know of certain talent acquisition leaders and talent acquisition teams who make it a point to reach out to you after a month, after 3 months, even after a year to say, hey, I onboarded you and how are you feeling now? Is everything okay for you? Is there something that I can do? And that makes a huge difference. And I've seen only maybe four in my 26 years of corporate journey. And I can still count them, and I really am in touch with them too, because they made a difference, right? So I'm saying uh, talent acquisition is a very, very critical role. It's an extension of the employer brand, and it's very important for talent acquisition teams to be cognizant of the criticality of the role that they are in at whatever level.
Uh, the way you put it, I can almost see one of the people in my audience is a lady named Priya who heads our L&D organization. She must be clapping her hands just listening to you, because that is the everyday challenge that she takes up, where she says, we have to have the consistency of candidate experience if we
Mm.
want them to come back to us again and again. Uh, in fact, to that point, you had mentioned when we were discussing before about how we build the alumni network by that kind of positive experience.
Absolutely. So I would even go back to say there are a couple of ways that you need to be doing it. One is, what is the kind of USP that you're declaring on social media, which is the first point of contact for a candidate. But it doesn't end there. So post the social media experience, information, the way the job is described on the portal, the way the role is defined, and the kind of experience someone gets by reading it, the feel that
Mhm,
the potential candidate gets by reading it, is the starting point for somebody to even apply for a job. The
mhm,
second part of it is the experience doesn't end there. So if it's a very glorified posting that you have, but then nobody from the team even responds when somebody applies for that job, which is also very, very
mm,
common, then the experience is, a first stage disaster, right? I mean, then I will tell my friends, three other friends, that, oh, you can keep applying to that job that's posted on LinkedIn. You are never going to get a response, or it's only an automated response that hits your inbox. The second part of it is, how are you defining your unique selling proposition? How careful are you in bringing elements of what you value in a candidate? And does that align with what the organization wants? That becomes critical. And that's where I talked about the job description that you post out there. How much of thought has gone into it? Because very many times a person applies for a job based on the JD, and once he or she lands in the company, then it's like it's a complete, I mean, it's 20% there and 80% not there. That's another
mm,
experience that many candidates go through. And lastly, I think it is about, it's candidate experience or employee experience is not a point in time activity. You
mm,
can't
mm.
kind of do it just before your employee experience survey, right? It's not going to
Uh,
happen. So it's a continuous process of
uh-huh,
understanding that every day is an experience, every event is an experience, everybody can
uh-huh.
create an experience.
Uh-huh.
Anybody can create an experience, right? And then you can't say, oh, the employee engagement surveys are not good because the employee has responded it in a at a point in time. No, 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 no. They have also gone through these grinds and they've so what I'm trying to say is it's a very serious business that we are in when it comes to talent acquisition or talent management or any leadership journey that somebody has to go through in an organization. And therefore, um, we have to be very cognizant that it is an ongoing, continuous process that you have to be creating about employee experience, and it's just not in time activity. Just in time activity will not work. That's the third thing that we should be aware of.
If there is one thing any of us should walk away with, it's that anyone can create that experience and it's an ongoing experience. Thanks for making that point and emphasizing on that. Now, many of the things that uh, uh, I know talent management does is build on talent initiatives, but it is the HR teams that build that actually implement it. So, how do you work with HR teams
Hmm.
to implement them effectively?
So most organizations, and I'm making a generalized statement very consciously because I've experienced multiple organizations as part of my career journey. Most organizations, you see that departments work in silos, functions work in silos, and one doesn't talk to the other. When I say one, it's not individual, but one function doesn't talk to the other function. When it comes to processes, when it comes to understanding people, when it comes to understanding actions. So there's no continuity, right? I mean, it's all in buckets and it's all in silos. So I'm not using a systems thinking hat to solve an organizational problem. If it's leadership development, I'm only looking at my division and what my leadership
Mm,
needs, which is good. But then you're not creating a leader for only your division. You have to create a leader for the organization. And that's the common bucket from which the resources will be pooled. So when it comes to working with HR, I think the first thing is how do we really collaborate through all the processes? How do you create an inclusive environment for talent and HR to work together? That will be point one. Point two will be if it's an international organization like yours, where your presence is in multiple countries, don't look at talent from only within a country. Talent exists, it's a pool available. Expand the scale, expand the process of identification, and ensure that talent hoarding doesn't happen. Talent should be made available. So it's very contradictory when we say that I'm not able to source talent. But it's also very sad to see that talent hoarding is a reality. And one division doesn't want to let go of one individual who wants a career with another division to happen, right? So this is normal, this is natural. So as part of any organization, it's important for the leader to be very self-aware that talent has to be fluid. It has to flow.
mm,
And only then you'll be able to also provide careers for individuals who are looking to diversify their experiences across functions or across divisions. So I think that's very important. And third, I think HR are again uh, they are the I would say the spokes of the wheel who actually have an idea of where talent lies. They have the visibility to tell you that this individual here could be a great fit for you. And that's why they play
mhm.
such a critical role in your talent reviews, critical role in talent management in the entirety. So I would say as much as talent acquisition is a very important function, the role that HR plays for job rotations, for identification of potential, for identification of talent in across countries, and for branding the particular role, they also hold the bait into brand ambassadorship, apart from business leaders and senior leaders in any organization. So that's the way I look at how talent can work with HR. Identification of talent, opportunities for job rotations, and ensuring that talent hoarding doesn't happen.
I love the term talent hoarding. it's amazing to me that how often it happens. And I never consciously thought of it. But it does because we want our team to exist the way we are used to working with it, even if we don't need that person, or maybe that person might be better fit elsewhere.
Exactly.
I started off in a biz dev function, which is a completely sales oriented role. Had that fluidity not been there, had talent
Hmm.
hoarding existed, I would not have moved into something that I uh, absolutely love. I feel like I live a dream every day doing and you know it. We talk about it often, right? Um,
Beautiful.
so, uh, till now, we've been talking more in terms of the overall high-level talent management. Would love to hear your thoughts on how an organization like ourselves can build that visibility, bring that visibility to our brand, and because that is the core of what we do, attracting talent.
Yeah. Uh, you know, it's even more critical for a brand like yours or for an organization like yours, which is in this space in entirety, to focus on branding. And one of the things that you're doing right now is a beautiful example of how you can brand the company, how you can brand the organization. It starts from there. The very thought that you want to make your brand very unique, it starts there. So with that as the starting point, what are the different aspects one should be considering to make the brand very unique? It could be, and this branding, like I said, should actually work across the employee engagement cycle, whether it is talent acquisition, whether it's development of talent, whether it is recognizing great talent, whether it is allowing talent to exit in a very smooth way. The entire process, the brand plays a role. How you treat people, how do I experience you as an organization, what do I walk away with every day, what's the value or the unique selling proposition your brand has, defines your brand much deeper. What are the values that the organization stands for, and do those values align with everyday behaviors that you see on the floor, and the responsiveness to many things. All of these are brand related at the end of the day. So in a nutshell, if we were to think about it, every experience we are creating along the along the employee journey calls for creating a holistic brand experience for the employee. And the second one is also about, I would stress on the importance of alumni, simply
Mhm.
because I've seen some organizations with great alumni network and great experiences are the best brand ambassadors for pushing people into your organization. So the way you create that experience, particularly when a person leaves, is more important than how the person is welcomed when he or she gets into the company. So I think these are critical things that every person should be made aware of. So it's also about, how do you socialize your brand? If you ask for an employee, if you call an employee and ask him to say, what are two values that we stand for? Do people know?
Mhm. Mhm.
If you, if there are leaders who are walking the talk, are they recognized in the organization? Are their names called out? So I think it's a blend of both the esoteric stuff and the reality, and how cognizantly we are blending the two, and how self-aware is each of the employee, which is a great ask, very difficult to accomplish. But have we created a sense of awareness about what we stand as a brand for? Have we socialized behaviors expected for us to be behaving consistently, whatever levels we are, when we are interacting with in external forums with external people, and how are we interacting internally? So all of these make up for a great brand at the end of the day. But it's not important if we do all this. How does the external world know that we are a brand? Are we
Mhm.
making taking steps to kind of understand how we are perceived? Because ultimately a brand is a perceived value.
Mhm.
So are we
Mhm.
sure about that? Are we sure about
Mhm.
that? How sure are we about that? So I think all of these aspects calls for employer branding to become even more important in the years to come. Exactly
Mhm.
because of the way what you said in terms of talent shortage, that's only going to rise.
Mhm. I'm noticing that throughout what we are talking today, your emphasis has been on the word consistency. So it's not a one-time activity; it's an ongoing effort. Uh, our head of corporate communications, Mark, and I see him in the audience. He has been, and this is with reference to your point on the alumni network. He has been huge into making sure that we mine our referrals and keep getting feedback when they join, when they leave, going through Google reviews, even the worst ones. He will just bite the bullet and make sure he goes out there and responds to it. It's not always an easy job to do, but you have to do it. Not everyone's experience is good, and we learn from it and improve. Right.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
the next question I had, which kind of you've already answered, but if you wanted to add something to it, was where do you think we should be looking for talent? You mentioned, the fluidity of talent, making sure that people are able to move. Then you also mentioned alumni network. Do you want to add to that?
I think given the world that we are in today, Anu, it's very important to look at very unconventional places where you can find talent.
Mhm.
When I say that, we always go to forums which is very relevant and very,
Mhm.
we believe that a pool of AI experts will be there and you can source talent from there. It's diminishing because those pool of AI experts are wanted by 10 other companies also. So you are
Mhm.
one of the 10 that's looking for the same talent. But I think, and when I used to be in recruitment several billion years ago, um, I would start looking for networks through the people who have not been selected by us. So
Hmm.
I remember an extensive database of candidates who did not clear our interviews, but I would make it a point to touch base with them to say, maybe this is an area that you could have, and maybe you want to try that, try us again later, etc. At the same time, put this question across to say, would you have any referrals? And that's
Mhm.
the missing link, right? That database is never tapped. It's
Mhm.
like once in, and then I'm not going to look at you, which is they could be potential sources of candidates for us, and that database, how do you mine it? And today with AI, I think it's so easy to do many of these things vis-a-vis the Excel spreadsheets that I used to go back to, refer, call, and do all of it, right? So I think the second part of it is there are many out there who might have studied something totally different, who might have worked in a specific industry at one point in time, but who are raring to kind of learn new skills and adapt themselves. So start targeting people who could be your unusual targets. If
Mhm.
you see a certification somewhere in robotics, and it could just be a certification of 3 months, check the person out. For all you know, it's
Mhm.
his passion that fueled him or her to kind of go and do that for 3 months, right? So LinkedIn is a great place, I would say. Of course, there are many other portals that one could, but then I would say be very unconventional. Some conversations generally can also lead you to the right candidate, particularly at senior levels. So
Uh-huh.
every place is an opportunity, and every place should be an opportunity in a talent acquisition leader's eyes. That's the way I would. So
I,
keep your eyes and ears open.
I love it. Love it. I am going to ask the audience that if they have any questions, to start putting it in the chat, because I am going to ask you the last couple of questions to round off whatever we've been talking about. And that is, in your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen businesses typically facing in your talent management world? And any takeaways that you would
Hmm.
leave us with?
I would say two things. One, uh, identification of right talent for the right jobs is one aspect. The second one is uh, women, how do we fix the leaky pipeline of women leaders? And the third and the most significant one is building succession.
Hmm.
Very often, these are all a check in the box event. And I'm bold enough to say that because I've seen that many, many times over. Very few leaders take the whole journey very seriously. And those are the leaders who are able to kind of build that pipeline and their succession beautifully. They also provide those opportunities for development to happen. But very often, the leader is challenged with time, and then there are other priorities that take away the key of his time or her time. And therefore, thinking about succession, having time for those discussions becomes very marginal. And if a leader is able to make sure that his or her path is inclusive of that, then you see those businesses are able to thrive. Because on one hand, we are talking of attrition control. On the other
Hmm.
hand, we don't have internal talent that we are grooming, which is an ideal solution in the world
Hmm.
of today, right? So I think it's a fine balance of getting leaders to become more aware, and that's where a talent leader's role becomes very critical, especially in the talent management space, in terms of sensitizing leaders to say, what is the risk we are getting into if we don't have appropriate succession in place, if we have not developed the right leaders, if we have not developed the right talent, and if we are not been able to give opportunities for people who want to groom themselves to certain roles. So I think those are two three key business challenges that I have seen on. um, I do see a contrast of leaders, some of them who excel at it and some of them who are still indifferent to the fact that they need to be doing that. But I guess that's reality. And
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, events will push them to do what is most important and what is right. So it's a journey.
Uh, the the statement events will push them into doing things. Oh, I would say ideally that should never be that situation. You
Absolutely,
should have planned
absolutely.
for it. Okay. I and uh, and I don't know if you agree with me here. Succession planning across roles, not just C-suite, across various
Absolutely.
leadership roles, right? Uh, it is an imperative and probably not done as much as and becomes even more important in probably medium-sized organizations because there are only a fewer choices, not there are only a fewer choices. Any final takeaways on the two topics that you talked a lot about, diversity in the workforce and succession planning? Any final thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think we should start thinking about talent development as a serious business, capability building, which is very crucial for organizations. Alongside, start looking at critical roles and how do we develop leaders because they are going to be in the forefront of leading the business to the future. And I think the third and most important one is to make sure that there is inclusivity and diversity that is represented in every forum in the organization, because diversity of thoughts through genders also plays a very crucial role in developing the right kind of insights. So I think these two, three aspects is something that I would love to talk about. And the last one, which impacted me immensely, is to remember that leadership is a responsibility, and it's not an entitlement, and we are all custodians of the role. So, whatever role we are in, we can't say I own the role. You own your work, because you're going to make sure that that work is for the organization, it's not for you. So we are there as custodians to design, to deploy, to ensure that it is architected well, it's executed well, there ends it. You really can't grab credit for everything that you do in an organization because it's for the organization, and I think that has to seamlessly flow. And the most important leadership lesson I learned is to walk away with grace when you are given another role. Take that with grace, hold that role, and give away this role gracefully with all the knowledge that you can to the incoming incumbent, right? I think that's most crucial. That calls for a lot of self awareness and maturity. And but that has helped me immensely in my career journey.
Having known you, I know that grace personifies you. So I'm not surprised you use the word. Um, at this point, I, they're not all the questions I had, but they are all the questions we have time for. But Priya, who is a very passionate L&D leader. Okay, she has brought in so much change in our organization, and she does have a question for you. She
Mhm.
says, "Could you share your success story where L&D initiatives had a significant impact on organizational performance or employee development?"
Absolutely. So I do remember in one of the IT organizations, Priya, that I was part of, um, there was always uh, dissent about, this is not okay. That workplace has better benefits, better, employee orientation than our organization, etc., etc. And this is always that mid-level, mid-career employees. So I think I remember designing a program which had 5 levels, and if you want, we can talk about it offline. But in a gist, the last level was where they didn't know what they were signing up for when they signed up for this leadership journey. The last level was where we took them to an orphanage, and this was the last level, which was the social level. And what are you as individuals doing for the society? So these set of 40 leaders, mid-level leaders, we took them there. They did not anticipate what they had to do that day. So they had to kind of buy the vegetables, cook for those 100 children, make sure they cleaned their vessels, made sure that they served this team. And I think once they did that, there were few who had tears in their eyes. There were few who did not speak to me. There were a few who were completely quiet for the rest of the journey when we came back to our organization. And very deliberately, Priya, I did not do a debrief there. I said, let me put it off. And after 2 days, when I gathered the same set of 40 who came with me, they were quite a refined set of individuals. They were able to understand and respect and appreciate what they had vis-a-vis the cribs they had before they went to this initiative. So I think any learning intervention must really have a transformatory effect on individuals. It while the transactional element will always be there, how do you design interventions that leaves a mark? And I can tell you with pride, 10 to 12 of them are still in touch with me even after, I think, 15, 16 years, to say that redefined my leadership style, that refined the way I saw the world, that showed me the ability to kind of touch other people's lives. So, whatever learning we give, whether it's technical, functional, is it one, benefiting the individual, and two, is it transformatory for the individual so that he or she remembers the importance of learning? I think that's one success story I can't forget. I hope I answered your question, Priya.
Thanks, Priya, for the question and your response. It brought to mind one of my colleagues, Raghu. He heads recruitment. One of his passions has been having these activities. And honestly, he gets the full support from our CEO. we have a lot of CSR activities in Vizag, Hyderabad, various other places that we have offices in India. And apart from all the things that you mentioned, there's also a camaraderie and team spirit that comes through that, right? And I would like to read out one comment that the president of our company has written. He joined the call. He says, loved many of the points Meena has made, tapping into the alumni network in a more systematic manner, going back to candidates who were considered in the past. They may have upgraded their skills now. Considering candidates from very different backgrounds, especially in new skill areas like from an arts background who got a break in UI UX space, and consider reaching out to candidates outside the usual stream. So thank you so much for all those points. You brought in self introspection. You weren't prescriptive, but gave them an experience. Wow.